Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hard Claim with Aviva Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play Blood on the Clocktower and get their player perspective of the game. And joining us for this week's episode is Blake. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Blake's played in this group for a very long time, so we're happy to have him. So we'll start with our opening question. We like to ask what your hard claim would be. You are the fortune teller. I guess since you're the fortune teller, you would have picked two players. What two players would you like to pick?
Yeah, I'll pick Manny and Lynn, please.
Well, we don't have a Manny or a Lynn, but what seats would you think Manny or Lynn are sitting in?
So we'll say they're my neighbor and the player next to them. So clockwise, the next two players.
It's 3 and 4.
Yep.
All right. Well, with that, you would learn a no.
Okay.
So if we were, talking right away, day one, what would you like to claim?
Yeah. So I'm actually going to claim straight up to you. I'm going to claim the fortune teller.
Fortune teller with a no.
Yeah.
Or would you tell people you had to know?
I would usually keep the information to myself. But I typically like to hard claim to one or two players. I'm risky like that. But I like to hard claim to one or two players day one, just to get it out there so that a couple rounds down the line, assuming I'm still alive, there's something there that somebody who can vouch for me to say, okay, he has been claiming that for a while.
All right. Sounds good. So when did you discover Blood on the Clocktower and how?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the year, maybe 2021. Like a lot of people, the pandemic's a little hazy. But I had started by playing Werewolf online. The Dice Tower started broadcasting these werewolf games over Zoom. Never heard or thought about playing a social deduction game over Zoom, and got really locked into that. I was playing it, pretty much every night of the week. And then maybe a year or so later, a couple of our players started splitting off and talking about this game called Blood on the Clocktower and how they couldn't come back to Werewolf because it just changed the game for them. And I eventually decided, okay, let me see what this is about. So maybe late 2021, 2022, I want to say.
Okay. Do you remember what your like very, very first game was like, or first several games?
Hard to forget the first one. Yeah, because it was Trouble Brewing. I was the Scarlet Woman, which was, when you have no idea what you're doing and you're evil, it adds that extra layer of nervousness, nerve-wrackedness, whatever that word is. And I can't remember if we won or lost, but I just remember being terrified that I'm evil, which I don't normally like being anyways, but I'm evil in my first game. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't want to screw this up for my team. So yeah, first game was a little rocky, but I knew I wanted to give it a few more games before I decided whether I was into it or not. And so I think the next few games I was good. It really gave me that balance to see like, oh, okay, here's kind of what the game's like as an evil player. Here's what it's like as a good player. And by the third or fourth game, it all kind of started to click. And I'm like, I like this. I like this a lot.
Yeah, I was the imp in my first game, so I definitely can relate to that. So you were hooked a few games. What hooked you about the game?
So I've always been a lover of social deduction games, and the challenge with a game like Werewolf that's all about player elimination is if you play a lot with the same people and they realize this is somebody who's good at finding the evil players, they just kill you and kick you out of the game the first night or two. And so I had a string of games in Werewolf where I was just kicked off first night. And once I realized, oh, Blood on the Clocktower, I still get that social deduction. I still get all that I'm getting, but they can't just kick me out of the game the first night because I'm a threat. That's when I started loving it. So, yeah.
Do you have an estimate of how many games you've played in total?
Definitely in the hundreds. I kind of don't want to know how many it's been at this point, but I mean, I've been consistently playing in your Friday night games for a couple years now. I here and there will play in like a Wednesday night game, so it's got to be 200 plus at this point.
Yeah, makes sense. That was going to be my next question: is how often do you play? So you play on Friday nights. You said sometimes Wednesdays. Do you get any more games in?
Yeah, not as much, not as often. Friday nights are kind of the staple for me. Depending on what's going on, sometimes I'll swing a Wednesday night. And I live in Atlanta, and we have a in-person meetup the second Saturday of every month. And so I've not been as consistent with that, but here and there, I'll get a Saturday in-person game in as well.
Funny enough, that was also going to be my next question about playing in person, because I honestly wasn't sure if you had ever played in person. So, when was your first in person game?
Yeah, I mean, it was maybe close to a year after playing, maybe after longer than a year after I'd started playing virtually. I mean, for a while it was obviously the pandemic, people weren't meeting in person, but this local group maybe only started about 6-7 months ago, and so there were some opportunities here and there, but the timing was never right. But yeah, it was maybe close to a year after I started playing virtually.
Cool. And so, what do you think for you is the differences, or how do you feel about the differences between playing online versus in person?
I need to play a little bit more in person because I think one of the challenges I've felt in person is that it really depends on the space that you're in. The couple times I've played it, it's been in smaller rooms, and I found that like you were almost like shoulder to shoulder with people in the rooms I've played it in. And so like one time I was the spy, and it was really hard to get any information to my evil team because I'm like, well, this person's within earshot, or that person, is right there. So I think that would be my main differentiator, is just that the actual space that you're in can dictate how easy it is to communicate and talk to the other players.
Yeah, I always find that interesting because the game actually is designed more for that. If you ever read the rule book, it does recommend keeping all the players within the circle. And I think in Australia, they still kind of play that way. For the most part, I think everybody else kind of at least lets people go outside of the circle. For some people, they just let people go into other rooms altogether. I like to be able to keep people at least where they can see each other. But
yeah.
Yeah, the venue can definitely make a big difference.
Yeah, online spoils us because you have all the space in the world. And the thing I love about this grimoire is you can still see people's faces, and you obviously can see who's talking to each other. But there's just not that fear of like, oh, if I speak too loudly, someone could hear me, or you have a little bit more privacy.
Yeah. So when you sit down for a game and you're about to draw a token, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Are you kind of like going over the script? Are you just kind of feeling everybody out, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I do like to look at the script and see what all the possibilities are, what I'm hoping that I get. Um, you know, there are some scripts where I do enjoy being evil, but 80% of the time going in, I'd probably rather be good. So usually I'm kind of crossing my fingers that I'm going to see a blue token pop up. And before the night started, though, I kind of like to just talk to the other players, not even about the game, but just kind of chit chat and have fun, and let the stress start when the actual game starts.
All right. So you prefer to be good. What kind of, do you have a style of character you prefer to be? Something that gets information, something that's more passive?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the script, but I actually prefer to be typically more passive roles. I'll be the soldier every game if possible. I'll be the fool every game if possible. I like for other people to have the information roles because I think, as as someone who's story told, like hundreds of games for me, I tend to focus more on the social part of the game. Mm-hmm. And so whether I have an information character or not, I can still be engaged in that way. Whereas I feel like for some players, it helps them to really have that information to figure out where to go and how to figure out what to do. And so for me, it's like, I'll take the recluse, I'll take, the soldier all day long.
How do you go about playing the social game for this? Like, what are you trying to read into people to give away some of your secrets, maybe?
Yeah, I hope everybody's turned off the video at this point because I don't want to give it away. But no, I mean, a lot of it comes just from playing. There's a lot of things I look out for. If somebody gives a defense and they say, oh, I'd love to get one more night of information, and that they're not killed at night, maybe they're good. Maybe there's a reason they said that, and it's not actually because they need information, but that's a red flag for me, right? Because if I'm the demon and a player says, I need one more night of information, I'm not going to let them get that. I'm going to take them off the board. I'm always watching for voting patterns to see, especially with some players who I know vote a little more a little more passively, I like to see when they're throwing their hands up because that can be a tell, or just who people are voting on based off of the information that's out there. Um, yeah, it's hard to like pinpoint like specific things, but it's just kind of those little things that you pick up on, the little things people say, like the "give me one more day." Um, Maybe by the end of this, I'll have a few more, but you just kind of have to continue to play and play, and you start to hear the same things being said when people are evil.
Yeah, I really love the balance in this game of, the social aspect versus information. You can't really fully do one or the other. And some people are better with the social, some people are better with the information, some are kind of mixed. I know for you, I would honestly probably consider you to be one of the better social players that I know. And sometimes you have it really right, and sometimes you have it really wrong, and that's just just how the game goes sometimes. And I think it's good for the game that somebody can't just like win the game only by, and it is a team game, right?
Yeah. I say it all the time. Look, sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get it wrong, but I'm always going to tell you what I think, right? I'm not the kind of player who can just like sit on my feelings or who I think it is for too long. It's like, because to me, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? You're wrong. You get a good player kill, but what's the best thing that can happen? You kill a demon or you kill, an evil player. So social, right. It's always kind of that. Sometimes you're going to get it right. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong.
Yep. And you mentioned voting patterns. So related to that, I'm kind of curious what you think about Butler. Does Butler kind of exist to help teach players to watch for voting patterns? And, not everybody really thinks that's interesting. But since you brought it up, I'm curious if you had how you feel about that.
Yeah. The few times I've been Butler, I've been more just worried I was going to put my hand up for something when I wasn't actually allowed to do it. So that is one way to look at it, that it does do that. I find more often though, when people are the Butler, they're just kind of picking somebody that they trust and voting with them. So, I don't know. It in one way inhibits someone from voting purely on how they want to vote because they're tied to someone else's vote. So I maybe am not the biggest fan of it because of that. I like to see, I tell people, vote how you feel. If you think somebody's evil, put your hand up and let's see how it goes. So it's one of those that I could do with or do without.
Fair enough. So if you are evil, what kind of evil characters do you like to be? Do you prefer to be demon, minion, again, passive, or have something to do?
Yeah, the only demon I would say, well, okay, there's maybe two demons that I would choose to be, and that's the Fengu. I love a good demon jump, and the Poe, because it's just that brute strength, take out 3 players, kind of a demon. But generally speaking, I'd much rather be a minion. I think I'm better at throwing people off or kind of helping to move the game in one way or the other as a minion versus at trying to do that while also being the demon and trying to not get in people's crosshairs. It's easier for me to just be, expendable, but able to kind of manipulate things in that way. So, yeah, I mean, Poisoner is always fun. Scarlet Woman would not be my preferred minion, but maybe something active, but doesn't have to be. I think for me, just being able to kind of throw out fake social reads and try and guide the game in that way is how I can best be useful.
How do you feel about something like Spy, who gets, pretty much learns the entire game? Is that helpful for you?
Oh, absolutely. We just played a game where I was the spy, and being able to just tell the demon, here it is, here are the people to go after is super powerful. It also helps with what you're going to bluff, and you can really create a more powerful bluff for yourself that way, knowing what's in and what's not. You also can manipulate the information easier, knowing what other people know or what roles are in the game. So yeah, that one's one that is, I don't know. Some people I've heard say they think it's a little OP, but I love it.
Always think that's funny because Spy, at least historically, has the lowest win rate in Trouble Brewing.
Interesting. I can believe that.
So yeah, so I know when they were developing it, the Spy could see the Grimoire, but it didn't have the ability yet to register as good or as a townsfolk and outsider. And they added that because it turned out that just seeing the grimoire was not very powerful in and of itself. And I know people, for example, some people from Grim Scenarios, their view is, yes, seeing the grimoire is good, but if you're an experienced enough player, you'll kind of within a day or so kind of know the grimoire anyway, just from talking to people. I always thought that perspective was interesting.
I could see that as well. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I don't know. It's for me. It. I don't know. I just think that sometimes those first few nights are really integral to the evil team and who you kill, and having like knowing exactly who to go after. I think it's powerful, but I could also see how it's maybe not as strong as a poisoner.
Sure. On that note, the minion that has the best win rate allegedly is Baron.
Okay.
I always thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of hardcore back and forths in terms of it's because it's easy to sneak in an outsider bluff, especially if someone's drunk. So we've had a lot of hard to figure out back and forths when a Baron's in play of, who to trust. Could it be the Saint that's lying? So I could see where that really could mess up the game pretty frequently. So not my favorite one to be, but it definitely has its strengths.
I ran a lot of games where basically the final 3 or 4 players alive are all either outsiders or players claiming to be outsiders, and at least interesting situations. And so speaking of Trouble Brewing, this is the script that you picked out to run. So normally I ask about, what your favorite base script is. Trouble Brewing, Bad Moon Rising, Sex and Violets. I'm guessing it's Trouble Brewing. So what is it you like about Trouble Brewing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's just, of all the scripts I've played, I've definitely played Trouble Brewing the most, probably played it 100 times or so, and you just never can predict. I mean, the Imp's ability to star pass, the Scarlet Woman possibly being in play. It's like, in theory, the town may have a lot of information, but there's a lot of reasons why that information could be wrong. And so it's just one of those scripts that we rarely have gotten to the end, and it's like, we know for a fact it's this player. It almost always is some doubt. It's almost always hard to figure out if there was a star pass, if there was not, where the demon is, if it's still the starting. I mean, we get to games feeling confident that there was a star pass, only to find out it's been the one person the entire time and they won the game. So it just has so many twists and turns, and I think they're all the scripts are obviously balanced extremely well, but this one's just kind of the GOAT to me.
Trouble Brewing recently for me had one of my favorite grimoire reveals where it was Nina had nominated Naomi, who was claiming to be the Virgin, and it didn't do anything. And, there was a world where Nina was evil and had nominated the Virgin. There was a world where the Virgin was evil and was nominated by a good player. But what nobody predicted was that both were evil. And, that was one of my favorite Grim reveals, I think, of all time, because nobody expected that.
Yeah, I played in that one, and I had to give Nina her props because I had never seen that, that combo of players making that move, and I fully trusted Nina that game because of that move. So it's just, to that point, it's like you can play the script 100 times, and maybe any script, but this one I played 100 times, and you still see players do things in a way that you haven't seen before.
Yeah. So which of these scripts would you say is your least favorite?
I always forget, based on title what they are, but the one with Zombul, whichever one.
Bad Moon Rising.
But BMR, I think that is one that I've seen the highest levels of frustration, because it's just, maybe we've killed a demon, maybe we have to double tap, maybe there's, it's just, I don't know what it is about it, but I think I've personally seen Temperance Blair in that script more than anyone else. So it's just, Zombul, BMR, not always my favorite.
That's fair. I do find that interesting because a lot of people kind of consider that to be a very social heavy script. So a lot of players who do prefer the social side of it tend to like it because there's, such little information.
Is that one with Leviathan or Leviathan possibility?
No, Leviathan's just a experimental character.
Oh, okay.
So you have like Zombul, Poe, Shabaloth, and Puka.
Yeah, well, I did mention Poe is my favorite demon, so I guess if I'm evil, I like it, but if I'm good, it's just one of the most frustrating ones to try and figure out. So I don't know. It's I maybe need to play it a little bit more, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's not on my favorite list.
that's fair. I know for myself. I mean, every script's designed so there's multiple explanations for any given thing happen, but Batman Rising seems to take that up. Like, nobody died tonight. Well, here's 5 reasons why that might not have happened. And then 2 people died. Well, there's 5 other reasons why that might have happened. And then the game might end when there's like 6 people alive, and oops, you nominated on or executed on Mastermind Day, or oops, a Poe killed, half the players.
That reminded me of one of the aspects that I think adds to the frustration is the lack of deaths, right? It's like there's a lot of reasons for no kills, and town gets antsy to see people die. So
fair enough. What kind of characters do you like to bluff, whether you're a good or evil?
Yeah, I mean, I usually try. Well, it depends on what I am. If I'm a powerful role, I usually do a mix of. I try and fake out, right? So it's like I'll give you some characters that are weaker and wouldn't mind being killed at night, but I also might give you characters that the demon doesn't want to kill, like the Raven Keeper or the Soldier. So it just depends. One of my, challenges, I guess, in this game is I when I'm good, unfortunately, too often I play a straight up game, and I probably tell too many people the truth. I just don't do well with like adding chaos when I'm a good player. And so usually my threes, for the most part, are honest. Unless I, have a read on somebody, I'll usually give an honest 3. And like I said, I'll usually hard claim to 1 or 2 players out of the gate. So it just depends on the character I am, but I usually am going to blend characters that want to be killed and characters that don't.
All right. So what if you're evil? What's your bluffing strategy for evil?
Yeah, preferably get some bluffs from the demon, and then I'll just stick to that. But I think, yeah, I mean, I probably will stick to 2s and 3s if possible. Or if I have to hard claim, I can always try and backtrack and say, oh, I was role swapping or doing a thing. But my goal, especially if I'm a minion, is not really to make waves in those first couple days. So whatever that entails, whether it's just sticking to giving 3 for 3s or getting those bluffs and then running with a bluff. Yeah, my goal is to not make waves the first couple of days as a minion. And as a demon, you've got the bluff. So I'll probably just pick one of those 3 and stick with it.
One of my favorite things I've done was when you were the demon. And as you mentioned, I've run many, many games for you. And I don't even remember what bluffs I gave you, but I gave you a set of bluffs, and there was it was a barista. So I made the philosopher sober and make sure they get true information. They went with Dreamer, and you were the Vortox. So information normally would be false, but barista, could override that. So they picked you. So they have to learn Vortox, and I was like, I think you might go with this bluff, so we'll go with that, and it worked. And that player completely trusted you, even though they learned that you were the Vortox. I love that so much. And then you all proceeded to create a Fangu and then jump to another player.
I remember that vividly because I couldn't believe that. They came to me and said Dreamer. I thought, this is game over. I think I bluffed Seamstress because that was one of the 3 bluffs. And he's like, oh, I got you a Seamstress or the demon. And I was like, thank God for playing who knows my style,
Yeah, that was it. And I think you said you were considering one of the other bluffs, but you ended up going with that one. And, it was pretty risky, but you and Lynn are 2 people I can just somewhat reliably guess what bluff they will take.
That's a bad thing. I'm predictable. I can live to that. So I'm trying to, become more chaotic, but hasn't happened yet.
It's a skill for sure. Some people just kind of naturally fall into it. Some go into it with no real rhyme or reason, and it doesn't really help anything. Then some just play it straight. So speaking of sex and violence, we haven't talked about it a ton, but it does introduce the concept of madness. So how do you think about madness in this game?
I love madness. I think of it almost like a mini game of, can I follow the rules of madness, but also get people to figure it out. I'm never someone who's going to be like, oh, the storyteller's not in the room, so let me tell them what they actually am. Like that's no fun to me. So it's always just about finding little ways to try and help them cue into it without just fully giving it away. So I think it's fun. It's also fun to see it bluffed and how it can, really, if someone's bluffing being Sarah Novus, or it just adds another dimension to the game that I find really fun. And I find when players kind of, play it how it's kind of meant to be played in that way, that it adds actually a level of fun to the game.
I always like to think about the shifting meta of this game because, it's ever evolving. And lately we've had a string of people who are the Sarah Novus, or they're on a team with a Sarah Novus and they make themselves mad and then out as a mutant to get themselves executed. And I don't know, I feel like this is one of those evolving things that's interesting to see, and then at a certain point won't work anymore, or will create more doubt for people outing as mutant and getting executed.
Yeah, I've seen that play happen. Unfortunately, I think the majority of time it's happened, people picked up on it and it didn't necessarily go the way that they wanted to, but it's definitely something to try. And yeah, to each their own. But if I'm the Sarah Novus, I'm picking a good player and hoping I can get a Sarah kill.
Yeah. All right. Well, one of my favorite sections here is to discuss these divisive characters and see what people think about them. So we'll go with the first one, which is from Sex and Violets. How do you feel about Snake Charmer?
Yeah, so I love when, well, I won't say love, but I like the character, and I like when other players are the character. There have been a few times where we've gotten to the end and a legit Snake Charmer had picked all but one player, and it's basically solved the game. I personally don't tend to like playing for one team and then shifting to the other, halfway through or whatever. So as you know, I'm usually pretty cautious. If I'm the Snake Charmer, I might pick one player and then kind of stick to picking myself. But it's fun to see how other people play it. And it is fun to see the Snake Charm happen or not happen and that information that comes with it. So I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
All right. How do you feel about Poppy Grower?
Love it when I'm good. Definitely difficult when you're evil. I mean, we've had games end on day one because a character like this psychopath who can kill, picks their demon in a Poppy Grower game. So I think it's a fun change up of how the game runs. Wouldn't love to see it in every game, but it can be
right. And it's almost like one of those other almost like mini games, but for the evil team.
Yeah.
Speaking of mini games, how do you feel about Atheist?
Wow, I feel my answer it's really just about me. I love it if I'm the atheist. I love it if anybody else is the atheist, because it is really hard to trust and believe when someone else is the atheist. I've had a few games where I was the atheist. Actually, I think the first game I ever played where I was the atheist, I convinced the town, I think on day 2, to just go for it, and we won. So personally, if I can be the atheist, I like it, but oh, I don't know. So far, that's my least favorite of these controversial characters, I think.
That's fair, and that one very much is. This depends on the person. I know for a lot of people, it depends on the storyteller too, because especially if you kind of play in groups that aren't private or just kind of like public lobbies. There's a lot of people who run Atheists in ways that just aren't really fun. I consider Atheist to be the most advanced character to run in Clocktower for that reason.
I could imagine. Yeah, I that would definitely not be one I would want to play with total strangers or people I've never played with before. But it's interesting.
And I think it's one of several characters that's a good example of something that you don't want and play all the time. It's kind of fun every now and then to have it on script. And even if it's on a script, I'll probably have it in play 20% of the time, maybe something like that. But yeah. All right. How do you feel about Heretic?
Don't like. Don't like it. I'm gonna be honest. So I think because to me the core of what I love about Clocktower is what I love about most social deduction games. It's just about finding and killing the evil players. Whereas Heretic swaps it into trusting that one player is the heretic and then killing all the good players off. So it just kind of it shifts away from what I love about the game and turns it into a, oh, well, let's, I don't know. It's maybe also it doesn't help that the heretics never trust me and tell me. So I find out like next day or next to last day. But it's for me, I like the core of the game of find and kill evil players, and it's not one that I tend to love.
Fair enough. All right, one more for this section. How do you feel about Legion?
Yeah, same with Heretic. I don't like it. The main reason just being another core piece of the game is that the majority of players are good, trying to find a minority of evil players and shifting it to having it be the majority of players being evil, tricking a small number of good players. Just not as fun for me. I don't mind it. It's I would rather be a Legion than the one solving a Legion game, but it just again it kind of flips it away from the core of what I like about Clocktower.
All right. Well, we do have a section here where I like to do, I just call it a basic multiple choice. So the first one here is Cult Leader, Preacher, or Night Watchman.
Night Watchman. Night Watchman.
Yeah, that one I think probably makes sense for those. I do randomize these, and I was like, Night Watchman's going to be the answer here for most people, I think.
Do you want explanations or just as like rapid fire?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's I like to just be confirmed, right? I play, like I said, a pretty social. Some people might call it aggressive, but like a very social kind of game. So being able to just have that confirmation means I can kind of go all out. And is the demon really focused on killing me a Night Watchman? Probably not. So yeah, let me just get that confirmation in and play.
I like it too because if you have somebody who tends not to trust you just for whatever reason, well, that's a person you can pick, right? And that's like, well, you have to trust me now.
Lynn every time. Lynn, here's the Night Watchman.
Yeah. Since I brought it up, how do you feel about Cult Leader? I feel like that's an interesting character.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. It's fun. I think the aspect of it potentially changing alignments is interesting. I will say I tend to not love characters that eat up time during the day. And anytime a cult leader's on the script, 10 people trying to form a cult, it's like, so just for that aspect, I don't love it. But the actual gameplay of it is pretty interesting. And we've had some really interesting turnouts because of it. So I like it in theory.
Yeah. And I tend to mention how a lot of characters with alternate win conditions aren't necessarily meant to trigger that win condition, but it changes how people plays. And, for a cult leader, it's almost like I've heard it referred to as a spicy empath, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, but yeah, with adding 10 extra minutes to the day with forming cults.
Fair. All right. So next one is, and one of these I know you won't want, but Heretic, Ogre, or Snitch?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to go with Ogre. I haven't gotten to play it yet, but Snitch is, outsiders aren't necessarily meant to be helpful, but that one definitely doesn't feel helpful. And then Heretic is just, not my favorite way to play. But similar to Atheist, I guess if I'm the Heretic, I don't mind it as much, but
all right,
we'll go with Ogre.
Snitch, I feel like is I don't mind Snitch personally, but it is maybe the only outsider who I feel like literally has nothing to do. I mean, your damage is by existing. Even like a recluse, you can kind of try to work out if people's getting evil pings off you. Well, that's good information for you. But Snitch is just like, all right, everybody, I'm the Snitch.
Yeah, agree.
And then I'm well on the record of Ogre being my favorite character in the entire game. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. I would love to be at it. It seems like a really fun character.
Yeah, and I like that one for the one-way confirmation. You know you're on the same team as somebody else. They might not trust you, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next group here: organ grinder, vizier, or widow.
I think I'd go with Widow. I prefer being covert evil than outed evil. So Widow, and most of the time, unless I see the Grim and think there's like an empath sitting next to the demon or something, I'm probably gonna poison myself to give myself some um, room to kind of get in there. So yeah, Widow for me of those three. The other two are essentially, well, I guess Organ Grinder's not outed until some things happen, but yeah, I would go with Widow.
Okay. Do you have any like strategies for who you're trying to like? What kind of characters would you specifically be looking for to poison with the widow if you weren't to
Yeah.
poison yourself?
Yeah, I think a balloonist might be a good target. A lot of it's going to depend on the seating and the information that people are going to get. So, like, if I know, if a chef is going to get, a really helpful number, or the empath, or I don't know if there's like maybe a dreamer in the script. Dreamers can absolutely solve the game. So it's really a lot just going to depend on the setup. But any just high powered role, I'm tempted to pick. If I don't think any of those roles are going to have game solving info, I'm going to poison myself and keep it hidden.
All right. Well, one more set here. We have Riot, Leech, or Oho.
Leech I think is really fun. Um, there's usually reasons in the script why multiple player or other players couldn't die, so you don't always know it's a leech right away. But I don't know. There's just something fun about being basically an unkillable demon, and if they figure that out, or when they figure that out, then it becomes just a witch hunt, so to speak, of oh well, which town folk could be the poison one. So
Right.
that one for me is definitely the most fun to be.
And I find it interesting for myself. I've started to subscribe to the script building style of not having other ways to cover for a leech, which still incentivizes the leech to not get executed and therefore basically be outed evil. But even if that does happen, you have that, town still need to figure out you're outed evil, but still need to figure out who's poisoned. And some people really love the outed evil game, and they'll love doing those mind games and stuff.
Yep.
All right, one final question for this here. What character would you like to be in real life from the script here?
Wow. I mean, for I fortune teller. Well, the problem is the fortune teller is like not the most accurate fortune teller, right? Because you're thinking people are evil potentially because of your red herrings and whatnot. So maybe either an investigator. I'm very like nosy like that. I want to find those evil players, or maybe the Raven Keeper. I like the idea of. I mean, ravens are awesome, right? So have
There you
pet
go.
birds and they give you information somehow. So
All right, well, Blake, thank you for joining us today.
thanks for having me.
All right, and thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode of Hard Claim. See you then.